All right, so apart from an apparent computer error that caused us to restart and do everything over again, we're going to go quick now. We're going into niches today, ecologically. Really important concept because this is the basic model that we use in order to determine how all the different species are going to act, how they're going to influence one another, and then also our predictions for how they might be influenced, by other things. So, for today, taking a look in Schoology down at the bottom, our green folder for Wednesday, May 27th. Bring that up. We've got our PowerPoint and then a quick worksheet. I'll show you guys what that looks like once we're ready for it. But for right now, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. We're going to move on to niches. And this is one of those words that is pronounced differently around the world. Basically, in America, it is totally acceptable for you to call this a niche. If you are literally anywhere else in the world, expect them to refer to them as niches. It's just it's just a bit of weirdness. Kind of like aluminum versus aluminium. So, if we're looking at something like this rock face and we want to know what a niche is, the definition of a niche says that it's got to be some form of shaped depression. Well, everything you see here, each one of these holes, that's a niche. So when we take this concept, what we want to do is people will do this for individuals as well. A big business strategy is trying to figure out what niche does your business fit into. Is there a need for something to fill that niche? Because if there isn't, then your business is going to fail. If on the other hand that niche is empty and it's in demand, then your business will generally do quite well. For instance, in Norwich, if somebody were to try to open like a Fifth Avenue level, super expensive, high end clothing store, it would probably go out of business. That's not a niche that we have in Shenango County that really needs or can be filled. So it would be a mismatch. So each of these niches, each of these holes, each of these depressions has space for something to fit in there. And when we take a look at niches ecologically, what we're really looking at is exactly that. We're trying to figure out how all these different species that exist in one community can fit together. Which ones have direct or indirect contact with one another. So, when we use this term in science, we're really using it in an ecological or a biological sense. There is the term niche and what that means outside of science. But when we're talking about it in science, what we're really talking about is how the organism is going to fit into its environment. Now, when I say fit in, the most apt term to use is job. What is the job of the organism? When does it do its job? What affects its job? Because a niche really comes down more to the job that the animal does, a lot less to where it's doing it. Its habitat, its home, is not part of its niche. So, for instance, here the eagle and the owl are both predators. They both eat the same things, but they have different jobs. The eagle will be the daytime predator, that's its niche. The owl will be the nocturnal or nighttime predator. So, niches. And the reason it's important to identify and define a niche is because all organisms in nature have to compete. Remember, according to Darwin, his theory for evolution stated that there are limited resources and that organisms must compete for those limited resources. Those with the most favorable adaptations will have an advantage, will eat more regularly will reproduce more successfully, and then they will pass on those traits that made them good and highly competitive. Well, by defining the niche, we can identify where is the competition going to happen. So, for instance, on this beach, we have 5 different groups of birds. Most of them are still going to be eating the same thing. But in order to avoid competition, what they've done is they have changed and they've altered where they eat and how they eat, and that's going to help them to reduce competition. Competition costs time, it costs energy. It's not something that you want a lot of. So, for most animals, they're going to try to find ways to avoid competition. Remember, competition will be over the resources you need to survive, food, water, stuff like that, the territory that you need to survive, and the mates that you need to pass on your genes. Now, the first and easiest one is to make sure that you eat something different. We see the zebra here, and all of these, I believe those are stork bills. Um, there's no competition here. They don't eat the same food, so there's no concern about them living in the same area. But let's say that you do eat the same food, like the zebra, the giraffe, and the elephants. All right, they're all herbivores. So now, for all of them to survive in the same area, what they're going to do is they're going to kind of compartmentalize who eats from where. So the zebras are going to largely eat from the ground because that's what they can reach. The elephants tend to handle the mid range stuff, brushes and small trees, and it's the giraffes that reach up way up into the tall trees to eat the leaves there. So they're all eating vegetation, but they're trying to separate who gets to go after what to make sure that there's enough for everyone. So that could be useful. For territory, the easiest way to think about it is to live in different spots. So this graphic has a lot of information there. We've got 5 different species of birds. And on the tree diagram, they have colored in green the areas where these birds will nest. So you can see some birds will nest in the top, some in the bottom, some prefer middle areas, other ones prefer outer areas. And basically, there will be competition, but it's going to reduce the amount of competition. If you take a look at those two little bell curve diagrams that are in there, red is species 1, blue is species 2. If the two of them overlap, then they're going to be competing over resources and they will be less successful. Ideally, what they want is something like the bottom diagram, where they don't compete over resources and then everybody can be successful. So that's the major way. Either eat something different, eat the same thing but from different areas, or live in different spots in the same area. Because this is all doable in order to try to avoid any serious, dangerous competition. Now, if it is competition for mates, well, this is the one scenario where um, it's going to be legitimate competition. We'll come back to the lions. But if you can look at that and not feel a little bit of fear about what's going to happen there, then you may want to see somebody because male lions deciding that this is a fight, that's terrifying. So, I thought, why don't I go through the whole niche of something that we are quite familiar with and give you a biologically accurate story of a lion? Are people excited for this one? I'm about to ruin Disney for you. So, let's go on. The lion is born to his mother and father, and all is fine. He's a baby lion. They're taking care of him. Now, in his young years, interestingly, it's good to know that Simba would be raised with all the other kittens of the pride. Interestingly, all the kittens in the pride are going to be brothers or sisters of his because only Mufasa, or I shouldn't, Mufasa is the only male in the entire pride that is of reproductive capability. The only other males that will be present will also be his children, and they will only be present until they reach the point where they could reproduce. So, all of the lions, including Nala, are all related. Now, once we hit the teenage years, as soon as Simba starts to develop some of those characteristics of adulthood, going through puberty effectively for a lion, Mufasa will try to kill him effectively. He will attack him and chase him out and kick him out of the pride and leave his son out in the wilderness to fend for himself. Now, at some point, if Simba survives, he will reach full adulthood. And once he does, he's going to start lurking near other prides of lions. He's going to start watching, listening, sniffing, and smelling because he wants to know who's in charge of that pride of lions and how strong are they. Because the only way that a male gets to reproduce is if he is in control of a pride. And so, as Simba reaches adulthood, he'll start looking for someone, some leader that he can kill and take their spot. Now, this is not an easy thing, and only one out of every 8 male lions actually make it to adulthood. The rest of them will usually just starve to death because male lions are not great hunters. Now, as an adult, Simba will return back home should he run back into his father's pride, and he will challenge and fight Mufasa generally to the death. And then, immediately having finished off his rival and taking control of the pride, he will then kill all of the kittens that pride of lions has. Because those kittens are not his children, they're the other leader's children. And he doesn't want the resources of his pride being spent on kittens that are not genetically his. And so that is the next step. Kill all of the other babies, the children, the teenagers, whatever else is still there. And then the pride is his. And he can start the entire process over again, hoping that he can control the pride and keep it safe from other males long enough to produce offspring who will then grow up and carry on his genes. So, ultimately, when we take a look at the niche of a lion, we know that they're a predator. But they are also controlled by what? What controls how big a lion population gets? Because the answer is what you're looking at right here. It's other lions. Lions control lion populations because of how their pack dynamics and reproduction works. So when we take a look at a lion, we can identify what they're a predator of, what they're a prey of, and what maintains their population limits. And of course, there isn't always enough food for everyone and stuff like that, but largely, it's other lions. So that is a quick breakdown for what a niche looks like. Now, today, all I want you guys to do, it's a quick worksheet. It's not bad. It says niche and habitat. And here, if you scroll down, it says 2 pages, but it's really not bad. It says watch The Lion King. You really don't have to watch it. I'm assuming everybody has probably seen it by now. What role or roles do the antelope play, the lions? What role does grass play? Then down here, it says, what is your favorite organism? And just name whatever your favorite animal is. Now, the next one is really unclear. It says, the article lists two things an organism interacts with. What are they? All right, so this gets a little bit complicated. Don't worry about the article. Just worry about what are two things in its environment that it interacts with. And then from there, down here is easy. What is a synonym or a word with a similar meaning for niche? What is a synonym for habitat? Down here, we've got 6 different options for each blank. You're going to do H for habitat or N for niche in order to make sure the difference. And then finally, at the bottom, you're going to look at this picture, identify 3 organisms, write their names here. What is their habitat? Here. And then find out what their niche or their job is in their environment. Remember, predator to who, prey to who. And that'll be the whole thing. Should be easy and quick. Nothing here is new or challenging, but it's going to be important for what we're going to do tomorrow because being able to identify a niche and describe it for an organism will be the basis. It will be the foundational element towards what we're going to do tomorrow, which is going to go down the rabbit hole of crazy train places. And hopefully, you guys will have some fun with it. So, with that, you guys have your notes, you got your slides. We've gone over the assignment for today. It should be pretty quick and easy. Any questions? Anything that you need, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see everybody on Thursday.